Good evening, folks. This is Luke Grand speaking. I am so glad to have you all here tonight for our Farminar. We are all here together because we see that there's opportunity in agriculture. In Iowa alone, there's about 42% of our farmers say they'll retire by 2015. So there's lots of opportunities for new farms and new farmers, and we want to be there to help you be successful. So thank you for joining us in this online seminar. We think we can ensure your success through a variety of ways. I'd love to tell you a little bit about that before we begin. This is now close to our end of our Winter Farminar series, if you believe it. Seems like we just started it yesterday. Just one more next week, the final one for our 2012 Winter Series, and we'll start again in the fall, of course, in the off season. But we're really glad to get to be able to put these on and get to share farmers' voices and their stories with you. We're really grateful to the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program grant that we got to put these on for 3 years, and that funding is up in the House and the Senate now. So we want to make sure that when you're talking to your representatives, let them know that you're utilizing this BFRDP programming grant to put on these Farminars. We have great success with Farminars. We've had over 50 now, 50 Farminars with about 12,000 views. And we definitely have focused on planning. We've all kind of been in this planning table before together. So we're glad to bring this planning session to you tonight with Chris Blanchard and Grant Schultz. One thing we have offering for Iowa beginning farmers is the Savings Incentive Program, and I hope that Grant can visit a little bit about that with you tonight, perhaps during his introduction. But Grant's part of a thing called the Savings Incentive Program, which is our dollar-for-dollar match to beginning farmers' savings. Networking opportunities. You can meet with the minimum is 4 events per year, like Farminars. You could do 4 Farminars, or you could do an annual conference and our Next Generation Retreat and 2 Farminars, so to speak, mix and match them. But that networking is really crucial, as well as we'll partner you with a mentor in your field. Whatever enterprise you desire, we can help connect you with a mentor, experienced farmer to help guide you. Add one more person to your advisory team. And then we do open up these for applications August through October of each year, and we'll have 25 slots again this year available. So we encourage you to apply and follow that link on the screen if you're interested. That'll be coming up here. We'll let you all know about it this summer when that application window opens up. But great opportunity. Just one more thing to add to your toolkit to build your beginning farm. Tonight we will do brief introductions, and then we'll have a great discussion focused on Grant Schultz questions, his learning outcomes that he'd like to benefit his farm planning. And we want to actually involve you as well in the audience. So please feel free to throw your questions in the chat box throughout, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered. And we will conclude right at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Practical Farmers of Iowa is an open, supportive, and diverse organization that advances kind of that triple bottom line concept of sustainable agriculture, really. And we have been around for 27 years now, and we're really happy to be growing at about 14% each of the last 3 years. So it's a really great time to be a member of Practical Farmers of Iowa. If you're not a member, I really recommend you join today. practicalfarmers.org/join. You can pay for just $35 a year for membership for an individual. $45 gets you the whole farm as a member and all the benefits associated with membership, including discounts to the annual conference and more. You can really save a lot of money by networking at Practical Farmers of Iowa, and we really hope that you recognize that and put your name in our membership roster. We'd really love to have you. We at Practical Farmers of Iowa are really a kind of a neat group of people to be able to know and network with. Deep thinking folks who share widely, across all different kinds of enterprises and production systems, people that find common ground in farming. And it's a really good group to discuss things with and strategize things together. Here we are talking with Fidel Baccio at the annual conference, which was held the second weekend of January. We have a lot of pride in our membership, and a lot of farmers really love our organization, and we're really proud to be a strong farmer-led organization. 10 of our 12 board members are farmers themselves, and we have a real focus on farming and farmers. We have lots of wisdom in our membership as well, longtime members like Barney Baron-Fuse, folks that help guide our organization, as well as a good friend of PFI and longtime member Fred Kirschman. and we always have fresh ideas around the corner. So tonight, let's go and get started. We'll start with Grant first, and then we'll go to Chris, and then we'll have that discussion as we mentioned. And really happy to have you all with us. So I'll pull up your slides, Grant, and you may begin.
Thanks for having us, Luke. Can everyone hear me? Am I speaking loud enough?
Sounds great.
Good deal, good deal. Hello, everyone. I'm Grant Schultz. I am a beginning farmer in Eldridge, Iowa, very close to Davenport, Iowa. I've been farming probably since I could walk on a small scale, but the last couple of years I'm really spooling up and getting to have a real deal vegetable farm. I will kind of walk you through what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do. And the big thing that we're doing is that we're kind of scaling from a human scale farm, a lot of hand hoeing and a lot of small tillers to trying to scale up into more of a machine scale, kind of scaling up our equipment. And you'll hear about that and just the challenges I'm having doing that. So I hope this slideshow will do you well. I've gotten a lot out of these Farminars in the last couple of years, and if you have any questions at all, type them in the chat box and I can see it just as well as you can, and I'll try and answer them as fast as I can. But with that, let's get started here. So this is me. I'm Grant Schultz. I did attend Iowa State University for agriculture. I graduated in 2003 with a degree in agricultural studies and agronomy. Ag at Iowa State is largely very much a row crop, two crops, corn and beans, and that's it. And I tried to learn as much as I could about fruit and vegetables while I was there, but at the time there wasn't much resources there, so I really did a lot of studying on my own. And I did some thinking the other day, and I spent 1,460 days in college, 365 times 4. And today I really think that with the power of the internet, 60 days on the internet of hard studying and a summer internship at a farm, and you'll probably have the same experience, if not more so. So I really kind of depend on organizations like PFI to fill in the gaps, and it's done me really, really well. But the last 10 years, until a couple years ago, I was largely kind of spanning between real estate and web, doing a lot of web development for the real estate brokerages around the world. And I have a pretty good knowledge base in that, so it's helped me a lot with leasing as far as finding land and negotiating for land, having a knowledge of real estate. I think there's some good workshops out there for that, and I really think you should spend some time on that because that means a lot for land security for farmers. And for me, deciding to farm has really been just chasing after the pursuit of happiness, the American dream. And I think eating well and living well means a lot more than perhaps making six figures every year. Next slide here. My brother and I are partners in this farm. Adam Schultz is a graduate of Le Cordon Bleu. He's a trained chef, and he certainly has a taste for fine food. When we started, we sat down together and we kind of created 4 pillars that we depended on that we were going to build our farm about. And I'll walk you through those and what they mean to us. The first one is sustainable income. And for us in the real estate game or in other industries, you're only as good as your last commission. Your income is very transactional based. And I believe that food is one of the most core things that we as human beings can have and depend on. So there's always going to be a market for fruits and vegetables. Always improve. I think it's one of the Dale Carnegie principles that anything not measured is declining or deteriorating. So we keep really good records on what we're doing and what we're trying to do, what our inputs cost us, what our yields are, and we're trying to always improve and get better every year. Be unique. We're not commodity farmers. We are growing the odd stuff, the weird stuff, Lorette fingerling potatoes and Austrian purple garlic, just things you don't see every day, and that's what we're seeing. Our differentiation in the market is going to be our advantage. And leverage technology. This is the 21st century. We are on the web. We are active on Twitter. We are using Excel. These tools are not complicated, and we think they have huge impacts for us to become more efficient farmers and better communicators to our customers. Any questions on this so far? I'll keep rolling here. A little bit about our farm. We are on 8 acres. We were able to secure a long-term lease so that we're more inclined to put in some inputs in the soil here. We are going to transition to organic. We've just started the process. If you look at this little green rectangle there, that is actually our high tunnel, which was funded through NRCS's EQIP program, and we'll be entering our first full season with that in production. This yellow rectangle was last year's vegetable field. It is about half planted to garlic now. Garlic is one of our main crops. We grow about 12 varieties. And again, we're transitioning from a human scale farm to a machine scale farm. So our biggest challenge to date has been equipment and what we need to acquire and what it takes to really become productive in that realm. So Craigslist has been one of my main sources for equipment, and I'll get you through some cool little hacks I've done to be pretty successful at that. We do rent from family. That was our land availability. I moved 2 hours from where I was previously living to be able to have access to land. And that's an advantage that we have. Not everyone has that, but it's worked for us, so far anyway. I am actively looking to buy a farm. So when I decided to go from a human scale farm to a machine scale farm, I needed an Allis-Chalmers G, I decided, as the cultivating tractor. They're very hard to find here in Iowa, in corn and beans country. And every time I did find one, it was some collector wanting $6,000 for one, which just wasn't viable for us. So rather than just watch Craigslist for equipment, I decided to start putting wanted ads on Craigslist, and it works swimmingly well. If you put a wanted ad in the for sale section, you will get so many responses, you will be very, very happy. And I put them all over the place, and it turns out that a lot of the machinery that vegetable farmers really use is the same machinery that tobacco farmers used to use. And that's a declining industry, and a lot of that equipment is freeing up, and we use a lot of it. So I found an Allis G in Dane County, Wisconsin, which is where Madison is, which is oddly enough actually was formerly a tobacco producing part of the world. So anyway, Craigslist is very ugly. The user interface is very clunky, but it works. It has the traffic, and it's done really, really well for us. Really happy about that. So, and not everyone knows what the model number of their machinery is. So if you put pictures of what you're looking for, oftentimes you can find a friend or a relative of someone who knows someone who has that, and it's just sitting there, and they'll get in touch for you, and it really worked for us. Equipment, again, I'm going to walk you through a couple things, and I don't think on the Farminars people share enough, what they're paying for things, what the going rate is for things. So I'm going to spit out some prices here and numbers on what I've paid for stuff, and if that helps you, it benefits you, that's wonderful. On the top left here, we have a potato digger. It's actually a potato windrower, which is used to combine 2 rows into one. But in reality, it's just a good quality potato digger. I paid $1,200 for it. I put a wanted ad on Craigslist. I found it in northern Wisconsin. I used uship.com. If you can see that on the bottom left of the slide, uship.com. It's a website where you can post a load that you have, and trucking companies will competitively bid to give you the cheapest rate to transport that machinery. So you're no longer limited to buying equipment in your neighborhood when you can buy it all over the country and get it transported to you effectively. Top middle is our high tunnel as we were constructing it. We don't own a loader tractor. We do borrow that, and we kind of have a labor trade agreement where we do work for the owner and get to borrow it when we need it. Bottom left is my Allis G. It is being converted to electric so that it will soon look like the middle bottom there. We bought a kit, and we're going through that process. I'm not opposed to gas or diesel engines, but when you get an older engine like that, you're better off just converting it and not dealing with the noise and the maintenance headaches. And as far as cool farm hacks go, we do a lot of garlic. On the bottom right, you'll see a soil dibbler I made out of PVC pipe. Cost me about $5, and it saves me about 10 hours at least. Paid for itself, and very, very quickly. I must really recommend farmhack.net. FarmHack is a group, kind of a subgroup of Young Farmers Coalition that kind of posts cool ideas and inexpensive farm hacks to help farmers do cool things. And again, Farm Show magazine, many of you may be familiar with it, but it's a magazine that kind of posts farm-built inventions, other things like that. And I've gotten a lot of that over the years. And I think you can get one issue for free at least to see if you like it or not. And youngfarmers.org. You'll always find good things that pertain to vegetable farmers of any age, but especially beginning farmers and the struggles and the triumphs that we have. So must recommend that. And at this point, at Moses, which was a week or two ago, a lot of young farmers got together and we're thinking about putting together a farm hack event here in Iowa this summer. And that's usually a 2-day event where farmers get together and spit out ideas and problems that they have and solve them using inventions or design, good thinking. So farmhack.net. And I'm sure we can get a mailing list together if you're interested to participate in that event. So now let's get down to the nuts and bolts of why we're here. We're here to determine whether or not we have a viable farming operation and whether or not it will be profitable. So me as a beginning farmer, I have 2 things to do. That is, number 1, acquire equipment, and number 2, determine whether or not I will be profitable, hopefully before I even try. So I use math. And in 10 years of real estate brokerage and investment and dealing with all that stuff, I got into some very in-depth internal rate of return and net present value and cash flows and all these complicated mathematical things. But in reality, I do it very simply for determining whether or not I need a piece of equipment or what to buy. And that's just a simple 1-year cash-on-cash return on investment. It's an easy rule of thumb to determine how long it will take for something to pay itself back and what kind of value it has for me. So you'll see in these diagrams here, I'm determining or evaluating 2 different items. One is, how much am I doing? How much am I spending? How much time am I using to do a certain agricultural operation? And what would I save by doing that in a mechanized fashion? So a Jang planter there on the right, which I just bought at the Moses conference. It's pretty easy to see it pays for itself remarkably quickly. A $450 investment and it's paid for in less than a year. Yes, I'm on board. Let's do it. So a question I'll have for Chris later is, what do you really use when you're evaluating what to buy and how much to pay and things like that? We do a lot of garlic. A straw blower is probably very near to us purchasing that because it's just a lot of work to mulch as much garlic as we have in the ground. We're going to pull out a little over 2,000 pounds, over 1 ton of heirloom hardneck and softneck garlic this fall. So we need to think about those labor savings. And then the main tool that I've used to date for evaluating whether or not our farm is profitable or not, or projected profit, is enterprise budgets. And there's a lot of different sources for enterprise budgets in the world. Iowa State has actually recently put together some very good ones for fruit and vegetable crops. But one thing you need to be aware of is that everything is different. They do their enterprise budgets on a 4-foot by 100-foot bed. That's their unit of measurement. So if you're on the acre or on the row foot, you need to kind of make some adjustments as you see fit. And it's basically a way of putting in your land area, the crop that you want to grow, your input costs. And your input costs, especially as an organic grower, may be very different from what you see in a pre-published enterprise budget. So you evaluate every line item and try and keep that as accurate as you can. And you play around with the spreadsheet, and it saves you a lot of time and a lot of potential frustration of just doing it in the field. And I'm able to evaluate 20 different crops, find out what's going to be most profitable for me on a land area basis, and what I actually enjoy growing. There's some stuff I've just never had good luck with. Eggplant, I've never done well with. Tomatoes, garlic, pumpkins, we always do really well with. So University of Missouri, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania State, Iowa State, they have really good enterprise budgets that I found online. Some of the climates like California and other places like that, the enterprise budgets don't have as much carryover for me in the Midwest as I'd like, just because the climate is so much different. But again, evaluate them, create your own, and keep track of what works for you. In Excel, I use a Mac, so I use numbers, but it's basically the same thing as Excel. Excel can be intimidating if you've never used it before, but it is not hard. 10 minutes on a YouTube video, and you're going to have it all figured out. And especially a lot of these land-grant university-created enterprise budgets, you can just input the figures, and they'll often have a calculator that will do it for you. So that's that. And Moving on, I am one of those libertarian capitalist, yet still kind of hippie individuals. So I think philosophy means a lot to me as far as a farming operation goes and as far as life in general. So I want to take a moment just to kind of impart what I do and how I act. And I really believe that thoughts are things, and envisioning your ideal outcome when planning a farming operation. If you're planning for profit, you need to envision that profit and how you're going to get there. It just gets back to creating that reality. Working that plan, use hard data. You're not in la-la land. You've used enterprise budgets. You've got real deal numbers. You see that profit. You know you're going to get there. So get there. And treat it like a business. And moving on, I guess, farming is profitable and sustainable. I have a large interest and a growing interest in permaculture. I read a book written by Sepp Holzer, who is an Austrian, just kind of focusing on less tillage and creating food forests, things like this, that if you have asparagus, you're going to get yield every year. You don't have to deal with the labor and the tillage of heavy weeding and everything else. And we're here to make money and save the earth for what it's worth. Next slide, I guess. We are on the internet, all over the internet. Our farm, twitter.com/heirloomlove, if you want to get in touch with our farm, see our tweets from Moses and other fun things. And me as an individual, I'm quite active on Twitter. I think I'm just shy of 7,000 followers. If you'd like to follow me, I'd love to follow you and share information about agriculture and winning and kicking butt and beginning farming. Twitter.com/primalpursuits. That's me. If you don't have a Twitter account, get one. It's a great way of being on an information diet and still just getting really actionable information for what we're doing. Through the SIP program, again, Luke mentioned it earlier, it's a 24-month savings incentive program, which is a grant program that's sharing your savings. It's kind of a cost match. I'm putting away $100 per month for 2 years. I'm working with a mentor, Derek Roller of Ecollective Farm in Iowa City. He's just a great guy. He's doing what I want to do, but he has more experience. Much like Chris, he's a great resource to learn from. So if you're thinking about farming and getting into it and scaling up and making it a real business out of your life, I'd really recommend that you write a good farm plan and apply for the Savings Incentive Program. I'm very happy with it so far. I attended the PFI conference and Moses conference, and I've saved so much from networking there and learning things from 4 days of talking with other farmers than I could possibly get going in on my own. But Chris, I'm about to throw it to you, but I've got some good questions for you, and I hope you can answer these, and I'm sure I'm going to have many more questions for you later. Number one, how do you evaluate potential capital improvements, whether you're buying a new planter or building a packing shed? How are you evaluating where you want to spend your money? Best practices for sharing equipment. Obviously, if you're borrowing equipment from a neighbor or renting it, what's the best way of approaching that if something breaks, and whose fault is it? Who's paying to fix it? Accounting. We've had a lot of accounting farminars, and they tend to be kind of boring and they drag on, but it's so important as farmers. What can you give us as far as simple tips to reduce the pain, the day-to-day pain of accounting? How are you allocating input and machinery costs? We're using the same machinery for multiple crops. When you're doing enterprise budgets or planning for next year, how are you allocating the labor and the wear and tear in that machinery for each crop? How are you depreciating your equipment? What can we see as far as tax benefits for depreciation? Season extension. I know that you're kind of a pro at these things. We're in our first year, full year of high tunnel production. Does it pay to heat? If we get a greenhouse someday, what are you seeing as your most profitable crops for the time of year for the high tunnel? And ultimately, what are some simple tips, some cash hacks for saving cash around the farm, becoming more profitable? What would you do, or what are you doing today that you should have done 10 years ago? And can you share that with us to become more frugal and profitable farmers? So Chris, I'm sure you have a lot to share, and anyone else have any questions for me while I'm still going here? Type in the chat box, and I'm right here. I want to answer. If not, Luke, let's
Well
throw it to
done.
Chris.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Chris, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. So when Grant and I first communicated about doing this workshop, he had emailed me some questions, and he was getting ready to leave on an extended trip, and then we haven't communicated much since then. But I'm just going to say that we have the questions I sought to answer in my presentation here might be a little bit different than Grant's. So Grant, if I'm in an area that it seems like it's appropriate to address one of the ones that you just put up, jump right in and make sure that I hit it. I did take some notes, but hopefully we'll catch all that as we go along. So let's see if I do that. That changed the slide on everybody's screen, right?
That's right.
It's gonna great. Okay, so that's me. I'm Chris Blanchard. I don't often look like that. Especially, I show this picture around here, I usually get a lot of laughs. That's Rock Spring Farm. We've got about a little over 80 acres of ground total up here in northeast Iowa, which is the hilly part of Iowa, and 3 greenhouses. 2 of those are for crop production. They're 2 30 by 100 foot houses for crop production, another 30 by 100 foot house in the front there, the red one, for transplant production. We've got a packing house. I can never remember how many square feet that is, but it's a sizable structure. You can see set up for 4-season crop production there. I've been farming since 1990. I started out at Deep Springs College, which is a small, odd little liberal arts school located 2 valleys north of Death Valley on the California-Nevada state line, and really was fortunate enough when I was 20 years old to discover what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and dove in and made a go from there. Ended up farming all over the country, everywhere except really the South and the Southeast. Did internships in California and Wisconsin, managed a farm out in Maine, managed the gardens at the Seed Savers Exchange, did some consulting for Cascadian Farm when they were first beginning to do some scaling up, what was really scaling up activities for them back in the late 90s when they moved into Eastern Washington. And then finally ended up here at Rock Spring Farm, which I purchased with my then partner in 1999. And up until recently, I did a lot of the work on the farm. That's changed somewhat since then, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We grew the farm very quickly because Kim and I both had 10 years of experience on vegetable farms. We felt like we could jump in and begin making a full-time living on the farm. So that's what we did. We both started working on the farm full-time and really grew the operation quite rapidly, starting in our first year with about $40,000 in net sales or gross sales, and then expanding up to about $280,000 worth of sales in 2009. We've actually come off of that a little bit in the last couple of years. 2007 was the year of the floods in Rushford, Minnesota. This was actually not the 2007 floods. This was the 2008 floods, which, if you live on the state line here between Iowa and Minnesota, you get the weather from both states, and really started some big changes on our farm. At that point, my wife and business partner left the operation, and so I was needed to make some changes. I also had some opportunities to do more work with the Moses Organic Farming Conference. My role there, I started as a volunteer back in 1999, ended up being the co-director of the conference here these last couple of years, but my role there was really expanding. I began to have some opportunities through the Leopold Institute to do some work with actually going out and evaluating different aspects of different farm operations, and then have really moved into much more of a management and admin role here than an actual day-to-day farming role, and then bringing in a fair amount of work or a fair amount of business under the other banner that we operate, which is Flying Rutabaga Works. There was a question on the chat about these different colors on the wholesale or on this sales chart. The bottom blue one there is our wholesale sales. Purple was our farmers market sales. Orange was our CSA sales. Basically just showing that some of that distribution has changed over the course of the years as we've adapted to the realities of the marketplace, as well as the opportunities and lifestyle choices that we were making. For example, in 2009, we stopped doing the farmers market for quality of life reasons primarily. So a little bit about Rock Spring Farm here. We built our niche around very clean produce. Our carrots aren't just clean; they glow. We do a lot of work with season extension here. We had some of the first mobile tunnels in the upper Midwest. In fact, when we went to build mobile tunnels, we were told by one greenhouse supplier here that they would not provide us with tunnels because they found out that we wanted to move them, and they figured that that was just too much of a liability risk for them to take on the chance that we might turn their tunnels mobile. So both of those 30 by 100 crop houses are mobile tunnels. We do a lot of work also with what I like to think of as upgraded basics. We grow onions, but when we grow onions, we grow these flat red Cipollini onions. When we grow tomatoes, we're going to grow sun gold cherry tomatoes, or we're going to have them in a greenhouse so that we're getting disease-free tomatoes. We harvest all of our squash exceptionally ripe. We do a lot of work with fresh herbs, things like that. So, but we also try not, I mean, we are the largest radicchio growers in the state of Iowa, but we know that we're not going to make a living being the largest radicchio growers in the state of Iowa, that we really have to focus our attention on crops that people recognize what to do with. But because we're a relatively small farm, and I know that $300,000 worth of vegetables seems like a lot of vegetables in Northeast Iowa, but you know, in the scale of things, that makes us a fairly small market operation. And we know that to make a living in that, we need to really focus on the things that we can move larger volumes of by keeping things at least a little bit normal. In 2009, I brought on Ben Kreuter as then an assistant farm manager. He's since moved into to being a full-scale farm manager. Some of the realities on our farm have been driven by the fact that I'm a lousy mechanic and I have a little bit of a short fuse when it comes to scraping my knuckles on rusty bolts. And so we've learned to buy on our farm that it's important for us to have relatively new equipment, things that work right. I'm not a good fixer-upper. That's had certain limitations, but when we have a broken when a tractor doesn't start on my farm, then I just have a tractor that doesn't start until I can get a mechanic out there to look at it, because I don't know what the next step is towards getting it going. We do a lot of mechanical cultivation on our farm. This is a Kubota 245. We have used a G in the past that we rented from a farm that went out of business up in Minnesota, and I really like this. I really like this Kubota offset cultivating tractor. We've done a lot of work lately with cover crops. We didn't do so great last fall. 2 years ago, we managed to get every acre planted to cover crops here on the farm. That's something that we want to do more of as a soil building technique. It's not perfect. In recent years, we've had to do a lot more work in working our ridgelands. When we bought our farm, we had 6 acres of nice bottomland, but that's it. And 6 acres of nice bottomland is not enough to sustain a full-time living for 2 people, at least in our experience with our models, our markets, and our pricing structures. So we've moved up onto the ridges, and that's meant doing a lot of work with contour farming, which is less than fun with vegetables. And if you think it's hard to find somebody who can drive a tractor straight, see if you can find somebody who can drive a tractor crooked in just the way that you want them to. We do have a nice, we're located right at the top of our watershed. We're 3 miles from the start of Middle Bear Creek, and that's a nice place to be from a water perspective, but it does make finding that good flat land hard. We do have a natural trout stream running through our bottoms. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we had the DNR out here 2 falls ago. They were sampling water in the area. They said that our creek and our water coming off our farm was the cleanest of any that they had sampled. And, you know, I do talk a lot about production, but that's something that to me is really important. Donna is asking about no-till. We haven't tried no-till. From what I've seen in vegetables in our area, it's not particularly practical. So we just haven't really done much work with it. We do kind of a minimum tillage technique where we do, I'd say modified minimum tillage. We go through with a yeoman's plow and subsoil about 18 to 24 inches deep. That does a very gentle lifting motion. I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders when I do that. It lifts the soil up and then drops it back down. And then we go over that with a rototiller 2 to 4 inches deep, depending on the weed pressure that we're dealing with. So I want to talk a little bit about goals here, and then I'm going to jump into answering some of Grant's questions. So a lot of times when people are playing with finances, they're really rolling the dice. And when it comes to making investments especially, it's not always really clear whether you're going after more money, more time, or a greater quality of life. And I have a friend who's a contractor. He likes to draw a triangle for his clients, and he says, you can hate, and so he draws this triangle, and each side he labels one's fast, one's right, and one's cheap. And he always says to them, pick two. And I think in a lot of ways, when we're making investments, we need to really understand what it is that we're trying to get out of it. And if we are trying to get more money out of it, why are we trying to get more money out of it? Are we trying to improve our quality of life? Then is this really going to improve our quality of life? Stress is oftentimes a motivator for economic activity on the farm. I think a good definition of stress is that it's the dissonance between dissonance between sorry, having a Mitt Romney moment here. No, that was that other guy. So the stress is when you have a dissonance between priorities and an application of resources. When you're not putting your time, your money, your energy towards the things that you've said are important to you. So which is what makes it really important to have goals and to understand your priorities. I saw that Andy Dunham's on here, and Andy Dunham knows that I haven't always been the perfect. He worked here on the farm, I think it was 2003 or 2004, knows that I'm not always the perfect example of this, but knowing where your priorities are and making time to act on those. I didn't take a real vacation on this farm until the spring of 2009, when after the Moses Organic Farming Conference, I dropped everything and went to Fairbanks, Alaska with my son. It was the first time that I had taken a solid week completely off, no farm-related activities at all, in almost 20 years. It was kind of ridiculous. But making that time for Oliver was an absolutely critical point and something that Oliver continues to talk about and reflect on. And knowing that happiness oftentimes has to do not so much with knowing what we're doing, but also knowing what we're not doing. This is not me not lying in the grass with my legs up in the air, but you got to be comfortable with with all of the things that you have to do on the farm, and knowing that you're not going to get to all of them. Understanding that on the farm there's always something to do, and that does mean that you're never gonna get all of that stuff done. And being aware of what the things are that you're not getting done when you are doing other things. We also have goals because it provides a situation where we can be responsive to the ever-developing situation around us, so that when things change, when we have floods, when we have divorces, when business partnerships break up, when it's a drought year, when your major market disappears, that you can respond in an agile, nimble manner to that and make good choices that keep you moving forward, instead of just reacting to the situation, that you're actually having a chance to respond to the situation around you, leading towards something else instead of just running away from the problems that you've got. And one of the most common questions I get from people who've been farming for about 3 years, Grant, I'm surprised you didn't ask about this, is how do you find balance in your life? And I used to ponder this one a lot as somebody who has led a life that's out of balance for a very long time. And it occurred to me that you actually don't find balance, you do balance. It's a verb, it's not a noun, it's not a state of being. And we do that every day by making the choices that we make. When it comes to goals, I think it's extremely important to write things down. Writing down your goals gives you two things. One, it gives you something powerful to move towards. It creates a sense of commitment on your part towards those things. The other thing it does, if you're farming with a partner or with multiple people, is it gives an opportunity for everybody to get onto the same page and to not have to have any questions about what people mean. When you write things down, it almost opens up the dialogue even more for folks to discuss and say, is that what you really mean? When you say you want a quality of life, or when you say that you want balance, what is it that you're going after and trying to get? And then you have something written down that you can measure your decisions against. So, Grant, you had asked. So I took the questions that Grant asked, and I kind of organized them into a few different sections here. So I've got. I'm going to take a quick look at my notes here and tell you how I ended up with this organized. We did accounting and organization, where I'm going to talk about least painful accounting techniques, some things about asset allocations, and then actually how to get the work of doing accounting done. Managing year-round cash flow with a CSA or other outlets. Pre-selling crops to institutional buyers for cash flow was a question that Grant had had. I want to talk about that a little bit. Then the next major area is profitability. We'll talk about some of our crop profitability evaluation tools, and then how we attribute machinery or allocate machinery and input costs. And then talking a little bit about investments and equipment sharing versus purchase, evaluating ROI on a new equipment, other things to think about when we're looking at making an investment. And then I'll talk a little bit about season extension and some of our experience with return on investment with that. Least painful accounting software. You know, Grant, you mentioned that you're a Mac user. I'm a Windows user, and the reason I'm a Windows user is not necessarily because Windows is the better program. It's just what everybody uses. It's what fits in with the rest of the world. I've found that QuickBooks is very much the same way. QuickBooks is the industry standard. If you go to an accountant, they're going to know how to use QuickBooks. And so that's a great source for being able to find extra help, find resources online about how to get the jobs done. That's a big reason that I use QuickBooks. I also find that using an actual accounting program instead of using something like a spreadsheet, it really does facilitate the work, and more importantly, it does the accounting for you. It really means that you can, for the most part, focus on doing bookkeeping, which is a far simpler activity and requires far less understanding about what's going on behind the scenes in an accounting program. And bookkeepers get paid a lot less than accountants do. And I want to make my work as no-brainer as possible to get the highest possible results out of it. QuickBooks really sets me up well to do that. I do know people that use other programs and are happy with other programs, but for me, QuickBooks has been positively the way to go. Also, my mom does QuickBooks for a living, and so when I've got questions, I can get answers in a hurry.
Chris, let me interrupt you for one moment with a dissenting opinion, if you will. I tried QuickBooks for years, and I was actually doing the online version, the subscription version, and I got tired of paying, I believe it was $30 a month for it, versus you can buy a version for your $300 or $400, and it's good for the rest of your life. But I actually found a software called Money Dance, which is a terrible name, but it's almost like QuickBooks but more intuitive, and it was like $50, and it's excellent, and you can still export it as a QuickBooks file. So more power to you. I just became incredibly frustrated, and I'll let you continue.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the things I've learned to do when I buy software is I go right out and I buy the For Dummies version book that goes along with that software and make sure that I take time to process through that. But when it comes to making the bookkeeping painless, I think that that everything fits into a similar format. So I want to talk a little bit about how I actually do my bookkeeping process here on the farm. And this is essentially, I do this with any information here on the farm. I collect, I process, and I do I do what's indicated in that process. So I talk a little bit about collection. Whenever I get a receipt or any other piece of financial information that gets printed off, it gets thrown in the inbox that's at my desk. Whoops. So yeah, so it goes in the inbox. This sits on the corner of my desk. It's easy to access here in the office, and then it's easy to access when I'm standing or sitting at my desk. The next step I do is to process, and that processing really is a matter of taking each of these receipts out of the inbox, having it appropriately coded. So as I'm collecting things, I'm going to write down enough information so that I know what it's for, but not so much no more than that. I want to make sure I have enough information, but no more than I absolutely need. Because if I try to write down 5 pieces of data on every piece of paper, I know that I'm not going to do it. But here you can see that I've marked the account that it's going to go in, which is CGAS, which is our abbreviation for car gas. It's got a credit card number, it's got a date, it's got an amount. Everything's right there that I need on it. We use the service cross on our farm. This has been a nice way to facilitate everybody using making the information in the same, keeping track of the information in the same way. So we do this all over the farm. We draw this mark, and it's not so much that you have to get the 4 things in the right place, but it's knowing that there's a way to organize the information, and there's a place to look and see that there are 4 different pieces of information here. The account is the classification, or the way that QuickBooks keeps track of money on a fundamental level is called an account. A class is another way of tracking it. I'm not going to get too far into that. And then a date and a simple payment type. A lot of times on our farm, a payment type, if you're using a credit card, you would write down the last 4 digits of the credit card. If you're using a debit card, it's the last 4 digits of the debit card. Or a check number, we'd put a CK and then the check number. Again, keeping it as simple as possible. There's an example of what that might look like on a receipt for potting soil. When I'm processing things, everything gets filed then according to the next action that I'm going to take on it. So I put all of the credit card receipts in one file, checks and anything that's associated with the checking account in the next file, bills that need to be entered go in another file, cash receipts in another file. So we're putting that information in. We're doing this every day so that I never get a big backlog. Now, every day is my goal, but I don't actually get it done every day. Sometimes there's a 2 or 3 day backlog, but knowing that I want to get onto it on a daily basis, if I have a weekly schedule and I miss it for a week, then I've got a real problem. This way I'm really staying on top of things. And then I pull once a week or so, I'm pulling that information out and in each of those files and actually doing the work. And because the work is organized, then I've put everything that has to do with the checking account is in one place, and everything that has to do with the credit card accounts is in another place. Makes it very simple to sit down and kind of do batch processing, which is a big term in the hacking community, and time hackers, they talk about you want to take everything that has similar functions and do it all at the same time. So we do that way. I'm entering all of my check data at one time, all of the credit card information at one time, and if you've got more than one credit card, having those receipts filed by credit card so that you don't have to keep switching accounts. You enter all of the Visa, then you stop, and then you enter all the MasterCards, and it avoids potential mistakes that way, because it's no fun to have to go back and recode those things. Entering all of the bills next, entering all the payments after that. I do have a couple of small hacks that I do that speed the data entry. One is I've got my QuickBooks set up so that it automatically places the decimal point. That means that if I type 5100, that's going to be $51. But if I type 51, it's just going to be 51 cents. It's especially nice, though, if you've got a $51.47 transaction, not to have to hit that decimal point. I've also got it set up to automatically remember account and transaction information and to use the last entered date as the default. Those have been really useful things to speed up that work. We use a bunch of shortcuts and transactions. Like, for example, for when we're purchasing gas, we don't actually keep track of what gas station I purchased it from. That doesn't matter one bit. Usually when I buy gas, I'm using a pay at the pump card, so I'm sticking it in. The only thing on the receipt is gas, so we just say we purchased it from the C gas station, and then it's going to autofill with the last allocation. It's going to keep track of where that money should be put in the accounting system. We do the same sort of thing with our items list. It speeds up our invoicing. So, for example, you see I've got this S10 shallot up above. That's a 10-pound shallot. We sell a lot of shallots on our farm, but we sell it in a 10-pound pack and a 20-pound pack. Rather than having to type shallot 10, shallot 20, we have it set up for S10 and S20 because we sell so many of those. We set up certain vendors with abbreviations also. For example, Jacob's Farm, we buy a lot of herbs from Jacob's Farm. We type in JF, and that gets me Jacob's Farm. It's distinct from anything else. And then, again, West 7th is a co-op. We do the same thing with names of accounts that we're oftentimes dealing with. So here, you only have to type a 7, and this is going to instantly get me to the right account, right store that I want to be at. And then memorize transactions, and I'm not going to go into how to use this list, but this really, you can actually set this up so that it's going to auto-enter transactions, so things like loan payments and are automatically deducted. If you've got recurring payments to Constant Contact or to whatever other programs, services you might be applying to online. It's just going to automatically take that money and allocate it, so you don't have to enter that every month. I love printed checks. I got by without printed checks for a long time, but being able to just, you run off your bills, you put those checks in, spit them out. It's a huge, huge time saver, and it's a lot less painful than sitting there trying to write out all of those big numbers by hand. That's a great exercise if you're in second grade, not so much fun when you're 42. And then I do all of my filing by month, and this is a general philosophy I have about how to organize information. You want to have the appropriate degree of organization at the front end so that you can get the appropriate results at the back end. Well, I probably go looking for receipts about 20 to 30 times a year. So I don't need to do a lot of intensive filing. What I want is to make that filing quick and easy. And when I'm doing bookkeeping, then everything is just going into a pile, and I take that entire session and I drop it into a folder for the current month that I'm working in. And that's good enough. I can find any receipt in less than 5 minutes, but 5 minutes is an acceptable amount of time for me to spend finding the receipts. Grant had asked about asset allocation, and I guess I didn't pick up, Grant, the first time about dealing with depreciation. Could you maybe just highlight what that question was again?
More specifically, are you using any innovative tax strategies to depreciate certain items, either on a quicker acceleration strategy versus a building, a piece of equipment, what you're seeing for, I don't know, whatever you've got. Consider me a noob.
Okay. I depreciate everything according to what my accountant tells me to do. It's as simple as that. So we've had years when we've taken that. I think it's a Section 179 deduction where you can write off more, especially if we've got a big investment and we've had an especially good year. But I don't do any investments as a way of managing my tax liability. That's something that gets farmers in a lot of trouble, where they go out and buy things that they can't afford so they don't have to pay the government a little bit of money. Personally, I'm proud to pay taxes on the times when I'm actually making enough money to have to do that. I'm glad to pitch in my share so that I can make sure that I've got roads and schools and other good things like that.
Yeah, I'm not advocating tax evasion. I'm just wondering if you had any insight on that subject.
Yeah, well, it's not tax evasion to get to take the deductions that you're allowed to take. That's a legitimate thing to do. I just chosen on my farm, I don't want to sit down in November, try to guess where I'm going to be at the end of the year, and try to make investments that are going to save me tax dollars. I find that it makes more sense to make the investments that it makes sense to make, rather than making investments to actually reduce my tax liability. Maybe that's a sign that I'm not making enough money and I wish I had more to worry about, or that I should have had less kids, one of the two. I do want to talk a little bit about asset allocation in your balance sheet, because this is something that a lot of people just get really uptight about. But a balance sheet is really just about totaling up your assets, totaling up your liabilities, and that's it. I mean, that's all you really need to do. What do you own? What's due to you? What do you owe to other people? What's due outside of your farm? There are a couple differences with farm balance sheets. One is the idea that you've got intermediate assets and liabilities. That's a really big difference. When you go to a bank to do this, they are going to ask you to deal with these differently. We also work with actual cash value. So when you're doing your balance sheet, most businesses would actually take a depreciation on their business purchases. But in your farm accounting, and this is accepted farm accounting practice, you put things on your balance sheet, with the exception of land. You put your machinery and equipment goes on there as its actual cash value. What could I get if I sold it today? And that's the value that you're going to put on. Current assets and liabilities are things within 1 year, so that are going to convert into money in 1 year. So or due in a year. So cash, livestock for sale, plants, crops. Current liabilities are things like credit cards and rents due, accounts due, and any debt that's due within a year. This intermediate section is really made to apply 1 to 10 years, and So things like perennial crops, vehicles, machinery and equipment, liabilities would be loans on those kinds of assets in general, things that are going to mature in the next 10 years and that were originally set up with a term of between 1 and 10 years. And then long-term assets and liabilities are things, of course, greater than 10 years, which is primarily going to be real estate and buildings, and then loans on those items. So, Dennis is asking how many years until you were making a living at Rock Spring Farm. What were some of the major personal farm goals to help me decide what scale was needed to meet those goals? I'm glad you asked. I'm gonna come back and talk about some of that scale stuff in a little bit. Years until we were making a living, a lot of that's really going to depend on what you call making a living. I mean, we've scrapped by on this farm. But I've for years have had income of some sort of another coming from off the farm, either from my work with the conference or other consulting and speaking that I do. And making a living. I mean, my mom used to come out. Well, the first time she came out, she left. She was actually in tears when she left because she couldn't believe what horrible poverty conditions her son and her grandchildren were living in. And so making a living is all relative, I guess. And again, I want to emphasize, when I came to this farm, I had 10 years of experience. My business partner had 10 years of experience. It's not like we had just jumped in. We really had spent all of our young lives preparing for the moment when we would own our own farm. And that's really different than somebody who's just coming out of college and has an opportunity to jump into something, or somebody who's been working in another industry and decides they're going to farm. I think those growth rates are going to be a lot different, and the years to when you're actually going to start making a living or have more money coming in than you have going out are going to be really different for everybody. Grant had asked about managing year-round cash flow with a CSA, and the big thing with if you're gonna try to, managing year-round cash flow with CSA. I mean, that CSA really means that you can start selling stuff in January that you're not going to start growing until March, and that you're hopefully going to be selling next October, November, or December. We really chose to go at it by moving into a year-round CSA. Now, I will say we just decided 3 weeks ago that made a final decision that I'm no longer running a CSA farm here at Rock Spring Farm because of our management structure and because of the other things that I'm doing. Because CSA is tremendously management intensive. It's the most management intensive way of vegetable farming. You're managing hundreds of different customers. You're managing dozens and dozens of different crops, hundreds of different varieties. On our farm, we used to have over 1,000 distinct planting events. So a different variety, a different crop, a different seeder setting, and a different day. Add all those up, it was well over 1,000 every year on our farm. And that kind of management was one thing for me to do when I was focused full-time on the farm, working the 3,280 hours a year on the farm that I used to put in. It's another thing to expect a paid manager to do something like that. So we've actually moved beyond the CSA because of all of the complexities that are inherent in it that actually make it not necessarily the greatest way to get started in farming. We did choose to invest in 4-season infrastructure because we have the season extension. We've done year-round production for most of the time that we've been here at Rock Spring Farm, and so we put up a hoop house for a packing shed, which worked adequately and admirably for a number of years. It gave us a place that we could heat in the wintertime. It was enclosed, and snow on the outside there. It's a slide from another slideshow that I stole here, but you do want to make sure if you're going to be doing any production in the wintertime that you've got the facilities that you need to do it. You can see here that to get this product in, we were actually having to go outside to do it, which is just no fun at all when you're trying to scrape the ice and the snow away, and so that you get your pallet jack to work. What we've really done for managing year-round cash flow in recent years is we've gotten into the herb business. We do a lot of business in clamshelled herbs. It's probably about 45% of our wholesale sales, if not a bit more. And we sell these in 6-packs. They get trucked up to the Twin Cities all year round. And one of the challenges that you have with anything that you're doing in a year-round sort of a basis is this idea of scale. And I drew this ladder, I got this picture of this staircase here because a lot of times scale can be a really squirrely thing to get your hands on, but it moves in a stepwise fashion. If you have a truck that can handle 2 pallets of produce, then it's gonna cost you pretty much the same amount to deliver one box of produce, one pallet of produce, or 2 pallets of produce. But if that's all you can handle in that truck, then the next time you want to deliver something, the next unit that you add, you actually have to go up that riser before you can get on that next stair of the scale. And then you have to move along the stair of the scale, and pretty soon you're going to run into another riser. And this is true with a lot of things around scale, such as delivery issues, tractor issues are the same way, greenhouses are the same way. So you want to really think about this if you're looking at something like winter production, to know that if you're hiring your trucking done, or if you've got a truck that's delivering 3 pallets worth of produce, that even if you're only delivering half a pallet, it's going to cost you the same amount to do the deliveries every week of the year. 8 o'clock.
Chris, I heard at Moses that you're using some innovative strategies for your trucking to market, as far as using a co-op of some sort. Can you share about that a little bit?
You bet. I actually don't use a co-op at all. I hire my trucking done. I work with Featherstone Farm, which is a significantly larger farm than we are, up in Rushford, Minnesota. And they're going to most of the same accounts that we're visiting every week. And it's been a great way for us to not have to own a delivery vehicle, not have to allocate the time to driving the deliveries, and to get that work off of my plate and pay somebody else to get it done. It's not cheap, but it is, when I ran the numbers, the true cost of doing those deliveries for me was higher than it was to hire somebody else to do it. They come down to my farm, pick it up, take it back up to their farm, restack it onto the pallets that it's going to, and then those stores are dealing with just one delivery. Now, we market all of our own produce and take all of our own orders separately. All the checks get cut separately. It's only the deliveries that happen at the same time. But it's been a real value to the farms to not have one more truck showing up on Fridays when we're delivering our product up there. So, Grant had also asked about pre-selling crops to institutions for cash flow. And I'm actually just going to skip over that. We're just going to go down there. Hey, I do want to say about pre-selling, no matter what you do from pre-selling, whether it's a CSA or pre-selling stuff to institutions, you are creating an obligation. Okay? So that means that if somebody pays you for your garlic, you have to deliver the garlic, come hell or high water, or you have to give them their money back. CSA is supposedly a shared risk model, but the way we're really marketing this now, most people are marketing it much more as a subscription program. You make a purchase and you're going to get something out of that. You have to be prepared to deliver on that. And in fact, that obligation to deliver, if you were keeping a balance sheet every month of the year, should be showing up as an obligation on your balance sheet. So, you do round out that cash flow, but it doesn't actually change your balance sheet situation at all, because you may have $60,000 worth of CSA money sitting in your account at the end of January, but that means you better be ready to deliver that $60,000 worth of produce. I'm going to talk a little bit about profitability. So, method of crop profitability evaluation. I would like to be better at this than I am. It takes time and energy. Farming is such a marginal enterprise for most folks. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of time, and because of low prices and high input costs, it doesn't always add up to being a nice return on your hourly investment. That means that it both makes it more difficult to do crop profitability evaluation, but it also means that it's that much more important. So trying to figure out ways to do this as you're going through the season are really important. I am impressed and excited about the work that the University of Wisconsin has done with their Veggie Compass program out there. I've had the occasion to work with Jim Munch on and off over the years, who's been a primary driver for that, and I think they've got what's potentially an excellent product over there. I'm sorry. So Kathy's asking, do my break-even figures swing more with weather seasons or actual crop growing? Break-even figures. what we make has actually been pretty steady from year to year. 2007, 8, and 9 were difficult years. Well, no, 2007, 8, and 10. 10 was particularly hard because it was so wet. 7 and 8 because of the dramatic flooding that we had both of those years. But for the most part, we're actually, I think because we made the investments in equipment and land, and because we have the experience, and because we got the greenhouses, that our figures don't swing a lot from year to year. So we do a lot when we're looking at evaluating crop profitability. We do a lot of sampling. So we don't necessarily keep track of every move that we make on the tractor, but I know from experience, and because I've taken samples, I can tell you how long it takes to till an acre. I can't tell you that stuff off the top of my head, but I do have it documented. And so we do everything on a per acre basis because it's easy. Acres makes us sound like farmers to ourselves rather than square feet, which would make me feel like a gardener. So the we of course, we do keep track of all of our sales here in QuickBooks, so I can go back at the end of the year and tell you exactly how much money I made from radicchio. I can go back to my CSA record keeping sheets and tell you exactly how many heads of radicchio we gave to the CSA. I can take that and use my planting records to tell you how many acres, or tenths of an acre or thousandths of an acre I planted to radicchio, and then I can look at what it costs us to prep the ground per acre on our farm, because it doesn't matter whether I'm prepping for radicchio or carrots or cabbage, it's all going to be about the same amount. I can tell you how much it costs to produce transplants in the greenhouse. I can plug all that in and then look at any of the specialized costs associated with harvesting or with handling that crop, and get a pretty good idea of where we're at on what we're making off of something. We do a lot of work with time. It is a major input on our farm. Our labor costs run at about 40% of our total gross. I know of very large farms that run up around 56. Some even run up around 51% of gross sales are going to pay for their labor. This is my favorite farm hack of the year so far, Grant, is our time clock. I have a crew of 2 full-time and 1 part-time year-round people here on the farm, and then I've got additional up to 10 people in the summertime. And so we've been using a fairly expensive time clock, but we went out and bought an iPod Touch and got a $10 app that makes it possible for us to keep track of everybody on the farm and log them in, log them out, and then they're able to, at the end of every week, my farm manager is able to email me the data for how many hours people have, and it saves a lot of time with spreadsheets entering start times and stop times and start times and stop times. So that gives me a general idea of how.
I've got a comment on the serendipity of this here. You commented earlier that you have off-farm income most of the year, or some of the year used to. I'm actually a product designer, on my off time, and I actually just put together a Kickstarter project for an iPhone cradle to do exactly what you're showing here. So people can look on Kickstarter next week for an improved version of what you're looking at right now.
Very cool. Yeah, this is just a car dock that we bought and screwed to the wall.
Yep.
I kept trying to come up with something with Sugru that would do the same thing, but I couldn't quite make it work.
Actually, Chris, why don't you mention that? We're talking about farm hacks. Sugru is a formable plastic where anyone can create a part that they don't have or that's broken.
Yeah, I mean, Sugru is this. It's a putty. It dries in about 30 minutes. Cures overnight. You get about 30 minutes to work with it. It comes in these very small packs. I've used it to make bumpers on my phone. I use it to hold cords in place. It's a nice way to modify hooks, make them softer. It's kind of a combination of bouncy, hard stuff. You get it from Sugru.com. And yeah, thanks for the spelling there, Grant. It's Sugru. And it's just kind of fun stuff. And give it to your kids. Watch what they do with it, and then follow their examples. So this is just the report I get out of that time clock. It's 10 times more useful than what I used to get out of my other time clock. And it gets emailed to me, and now I have permanent documentation of that. We use these. This is not a great picture. Sorry about that, but this is a 3x5 note card that we put together for doing any sort of miscellaneous time tracking, so that if we need to get time data about something, Ben or I can hand this card to an employee, and we can say, here's the job. You're going to record the amount that you finished, who did it, what time did you start, what time did you end, and what's your total time. And then we can track that back through the rest of our records to come up with, okay, that's how much time it took to get that radicchio harvested, or that's how much time it took to pack that Swiss chard. And that begins to get us towards those profitability numbers. This notebook, so one of the reasons the 3x5 note card works so well on our farm is that everybody on the farm carries a 3x5 card notebook with a binder clip. I like to refer to this as my Amish PDA, but this is our universal information capture device. You can write things down here, and it's how we keep track of everything on the farm. So you've always got a pen and you've always got a notebook with you. And I can't emphasize just how important that is for constantly moving your farm forward, to keep track of all of the different things that you note. And when folks talk about organic record keeping, this is a great way. You don't have to go out and fill out a form every time you go out and evaluate your crop performance or scout for insects. You got this 3x5 note card, you write down bug issues in the broccoli in field 41, and you're done that scouting. And then you've got a farm log that goes along. Attributing machinery and input costs by crop by acreage makes most sense. So I think what we do attribute machinery crops or machinery costs by acre, unless it's something that we would do for a given crop that we wouldn't do for another crop. So for example, I harvest my root crops with an FMC root digger that, well, they call it a beet combine, but it goes along, picks the roots up, chops them, drops them into the bin, and then we're able to put them straight into storage that way. And so when we're doing something like that, that does get allocated to the crop. But most of our tractor work is pretty general on the farm. I till, I know how much time it takes to till, and I know that I have a set number of times that I till before I plant a given crop. So we really just try to go on that basis. Tractor work, this is actually a tool that I use for more for planning than for anything else. But when you're looking at investing in equipment, you want to know what you're going to get out of that equipment. So we try to look and say, well, how much am I going to be able to work with that in how much time? Because that becomes a primary issue on the vegetable farm, where timeliness is so important. How fast am I going to be able to get that job done with this piece of equipment? I do this both for determining investments. It's also a great tool for planning out your day and saying, how much work am I going to be able to get done this morning on the rototiller? So you take the width of the worked area times the speed, times the number of feet, speeds in miles per hour, times the number of feet per mile, gives you square feet, divided by the square feet per acre, and that's going to give you your timing on this. So again, you can see here, if you take that 6 feet times 2 miles per 1 hour times the 5280 feet per mile by times 1 acre at 43,560 feet, so that's just square feet. The feet crosses out the feet, and the feet crosses out the other feet, and the miles crosses out the miles. Just basic math. You get 1.5 acres an hour. So if you're running a 6-foot rototiller at 2 miles an hour, you should be able to get 1.5 acres an hour done. We always add a 30% fudge factor for being able to turn around at the end of the row. Got to add time to hook up and take apart. But when you're looking at how much time it's going to take to get your spring tillage done, this is why we don't use a spader, for example, on our farm. It's just too slow. We can't get across enough ground when the conditions are right to be getting across the ground. A little bit about investments. As Grant had asked about that. Equipment sharing versus purchase. Grant told us a little bit about evaluating our return on investment, and I guess I didn't understand, Grant, that you were asking about heat in the tunnels, so I'm just going to run through this quick example of how we did an ROI analysis on a very cheap field tunnel. We were looking at a one-time outlay for 3,000 square feet, tunnel, no end walls, no ventilation, no utilities. So we were $3,300 for hoops and plastic. We always add 30% as a general rule on any construction project. Something I learned from Tom Franson, told me this in 1999, and every time I haven't done it, I've gotten myself backed into a corner, and every time I have done it, I've been right on the target. So our total estimated cost.
I agree completely on that. My cute little farm tech, $5,000 high tunnel turned into a $10,000 high tunnel pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's just so many different reasons for that. But think about it. Have you ever heard of a building project that was finished on time and on budget? Just doesn't happen. So we figured out our income. People always ask me, how do you plan for income when you're a beginning farmer? And when you're a beginning farmer, you're going to have to research from other growers and work off of published figures. Realize that when anybody gives you a published figure for how much money you can make doing the thing that they're telling you that they want you to do, they're going to be exaggerating or using best case scenario numbers, because nobody's going to sell you a book by telling you that you're going to make $2 a square foot in your hoop house. They're going to make a book sell a book by saying you're going to make $5 in a hoop house. And nobody's going to write a book about how much doing pasture poultry sucks eggs as a way to make a living. But they are going to write about how much money they make out of it in the perfect situation when it works right. So know that you're always going to be dealing with that. We looked at low, middle, and high scenarios. We decided in the end for this ROI analysis to just use the middle income. We certainly could have done it on any of these, and it makes sense to look at multiple scenarios. What's worst case scenario? If I only get my tomatoes in there and it's a really cold winter and I can't harvest any of my winter crops, what am I going to make off of that? If everything goes so-so, what am I going to make off it? And then how much does Elliott Coleman say I should be making off of it? And then figure it out for each of those and assess your risk in that. So we also then figured out our annual operating expense based on our experience. And then, so we have income was $67.50 less our expenses, $43.60, gave us a net income of $23.90. We simply did the math then. And on the left here, you've got net income divided by total investment. That equals your ROI. On this, it was 0.58. Now, when I was first learning about these ratios, I realized that if you take that ROI and flip it over, if you take your total investment and divide it by your net income, that's going to equal the number of years that you're going to have to support this investment before it makes you any money, which in this case is 1.7 years, is how long it's going to take this thing to start paying you back. So that's another way to look at return on investment, is how long will I have to pay for this before it starts paying for itself? Grant, you asked about sharing equipment, and so I got this picture of an extreme point load. So often with vegetables, it's all about being intensely timely. I've talked to other growers about sharing equipment, but most of the equipment that we'd want to share here would be things like getting a much better transplanter. But who gets to use the transplanter when it's raining, or when it's the first dry day in a month? And that's where I think you really get into the challenge. You have to look at that's where you've got to evaluate things that you probably can't do numerically. You've got to say, okay, what's the value of having something that I can use whenever I want to use it, versus the potential value, the potential for sharing something and maybe getting a piece of equipment that's either bigger, piece of equipment that's more efficient to use, newer, more reliable. And for us, it's really been that it's a lot easier just to have our own equipment that we're using when we want to use it. Now, things like that's just a little bit off there. So when we're talking about transplant production, seems like a logical place for equipment sharing, because especially early in the year, if you've got 5 growers who are each growing in a fifth of their greenhouse, then you're all having to heat a whole greenhouse to grow just those onions. So that might be a spot. Greenhouse seeders might be a great place. Things that aren't weather dependent, I would be more interested in sharing than things that are weather dependent, like transplanters.
Glenn Ellsburn is another beginning farmer who's actually made a pretty good diverse business out of that. He's been growing onion starts, and he has his greenhouse absolutely full in a slow time of the year. And that's become a profit center for him. So never be afraid of specializing sometimes, I guess. And you mentioned transplanters
Well,
and demand, and yeah, everybody needs them at the exact same time. I forgot to mention it earlier, but I did get a basically new two-row transplanter out of tobacco country, out of Tennessee, $500, and this is probably
that's
six,
right.
$7,000 at Market Farm Implement. So again, don't be afraid to look away outside your area. But I'll let you go back, Chris.
Yeah, I love that suggestion, and especially with something like uship.com, which I haven't used, but I'm intending to go on there as soon as we get off this webinar and see what that's all about. But if you can make arrangements for the trucking, yeah, you've got potential to save huge dollars in places where the demand is a lot less. And remember that someplace like Market Farm, their job is to make money on stuff, and they've got to make it on everything they sell. Somebody who's selling a mechanical 5,000 transplanter out in Virginia may well just be looking to get something out of their backyard or get rid of something that, from their kid that thought he was going to be a crazy organic vegetable farmer and it didn't work out the way they hoped.
Yep.
Grade A Gardens is asking about a good wheel hoe for a small farm. We used a Roi wheel hoe for a number of years, and I really, that worked just fine. I got mine from Peaceful Valley Farm Supply. And I went for the professional model and never regretted it, so I had as much adjustability as possible. And Grant's given me a 10-minute warning. Thank you, sir. Talking about season extension, return on investment. I'm skipping over that. Let's see. I'm skipping over all those, too. I think Grant, do you end up sharing this online? Or not Grant, Luke, does this slideshow end up online when we get done?
Yeah, it's on the Farminar recording link.
Great. Then you all can read about that piece. I didn't hit the scale and capacity. That was in this optional side. So I'm going to run back. I think this is for Dennis. Dennis, you want to talk about scale and capacity? Okay. Here, let's talk about local food lies and this idea that big is relative here. This is my carrot. This is a carrot harvester out in California. They're picking up 6 rows of carrots. They're driving 4 or 5 miles an hour down the road. They've got 3 people working this. One guy driving the truck over here, one guy driving the tractor, and one guy sitting here watching the carrots coming off the line. And they're going to run that thing 365 days a year, and they're going to make a lot of money doing it, even though that machine probably cost them a couple $1 million, more than even the largest vegetable farmers in our area make in a year. They're going to use that because they're going to start down in El Centro, and they're going to move that thing north as the carrot harvest moves north. And when things start cooling off down south, they're going to turn around and just come right back down south, picking carrots the whole way. That's my carrot harvester up until a couple of years ago. Cost me $500, but I only get it out maybe 8 times a year. This is what we're using now, that FMC root digger, $3,000. We only get this one out like 3 times a year, and every time we have to try to remember how to use it. So our cost per use, even though our equipment was a lot less, our cost per use and cost per carrot's a lot higher, even for something like that harvesting. So, talking about scale then, Dennis, if you want to make a $50,000 profit for farming, and when we started farming, we sat down and tried to figure this out. How much money do we think it was fair for us to make, or how much do we want to make on our farm? And we thought, $50,000 would be pretty good. Now, a couple of years after that, we had participated in a study with the University of Wisconsin. We found out that I was working 3,280 hours a year on my farm, and my business partner at the time was working 3,240 hours on the farm every year. That just included the farm work, didn't include any of our off-farm work. And we thought that for that we should be getting paid $50,000 a year. That's kind of ridiculous. A pretty low number to shoot for. But we took that number, we ran with it. We said, okay, so what are some published figures for margins, operating margins on farms and vegetable farms in our scale? And we found a number of places that kind of pointed to 0.4 or a 40% margin. So we took that $50,000, we divided it by 0.4, and that got us $125,000 of vegetables that we were going to need to grow. So we took that $125,000. Paul and Sandy Arnold told me years ago that we needed to be reinvesting $10,000 a year in the farm. So we added $10,000 a year of profit to be able to reinvest. Around here, a lot of growers were making about $10,000 an acre at this time, or at that time. So we went with that $10,000 an acre figure and realized that we were going to need to be growing 13.5 acres of vegetables to make our farm work. And so that was very simply how we got to the scale that we were going to need to operate at. Now, since then, we've looked at things. When we were making $135,000, we felt like we wanted to be making more profit. But we were running a profitable operation, so we increased the size of the operation and have gotten up to the scale that we're at now. Now, actually, again, I'm pulling back because my personal goals are to have a little bit more time to spend with my kids, a little bit more time to spend with my girlfriend, and I also am doing more things off the farm, doing educational work and outreach work that is being, which is really interesting to me and is keeping me excited and motivated to get up in the morning. And so I'm doing some shifting around into this flying rutabaga works, and that's necessitated that we're actually going to pull back some on our production levels. Right now we're running about 20 acres of vegetables a year. We have about 30 acres of crop ground that we're working with every year once you count up field roads and places that are in cover crops. So now, Grant, you asked, does it pay to heat during the wintertime in a high tunnel?
Yeah, and if you do break it down between wood heat or propane heat, and I've seen some really expensive setups for heat, and I've seen some really inexpensive setups for heat.
I don't like my setup for heat. I think that if you put the initial capital in up front, that there's a lot of potential for that. And I know people out east that are making lots of money in similar climates, minimally heating their houses throughout the winter. I haven't found it to be worth doing here, and so we don't do that. Also, from a management standpoint, I don't want to deal with one more thing that might go wrong in the middle of the night, in the middle of the winter.
Sure. Ben has a great question here. Are your gross margins declining as your scale went up?
No, because we got to be better growers. I mean, our scale was going up at the same time that we were increasing our management skills. So whereas in the first year we were picking out of the weeds, we rarely pick out of the weeds anymore. So even though we're running more ground, we're not necessarily looking at less profit per acre. It's also a little bit, throw that all together. I mean, it's a mix of enterprises. We grow root crops for sale. We grow herbs for sale. I mean, the amount of money I make per acre on herbs is kind of insane. But then I also turn around all winter, I'm buying in herbs and selling those. And so where all of that fits in the mix is a little bit hard to say. Yeah, I think in general you'd find that percentage profit per acre is going to decrease as you grow in size, but there's also there's a real sweet spot in there, and that's not universally true.
Cool.
Let's see, Grant, you had also asked about price appreciation, cash hacks. What would I do differently?
We've got a question from Ben here real quick. I've had an Earthway and now a Jang. I haven't had a chance to use the Jang, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. And
I use.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And they're inexpensive and they look to be a quality piece. I don't know what you're using, Chris, for a planter for cedar.
We seed most of our crops with a Planet Junior seeder. We've got both a hand pushed and a tractor mounted, and then some of our crops that require more precise spacing, I'm using a Stanhay belt seeder,
which are rather expensive.
Yes, yeah, but because I grow between 40 and 60,000 pounds of root crops a year for the wholesale market, consistent seed placement and consistent size is tremendously important for me. Cool. And again, I actually picked those up fairly inexpensively from another farmer in good condition.
Good. I think that people in my area, it's corn and beans as far as the eye can see, and Chris is in Decorah, which is just the mecca of small scale vegetable production as far as the state of Iowa goes, and you've got a tremendous number of advantages up there, and it's pretty cool.
It is a great area. I think it's the big disadvantage we have here is a very limited marketplace here in Northeast Iowa. As much as people are trying to do to expand that, they're just, in terms of total dollars of locally grown produce, there just isn't a lot being bought here, and we've really ended up going outside of the area for our marketplace. So you want to take advantage of that where you are, and think about that if you're looking for a location for your farm. If you're not close to a market, you're going to be paying a lot of money or a lot of time and potentially needing to buy expensive refrigerated equipment to haul your product to market.
I think we're supposed to wrap up, Chris. Luke has to go to bed early. He's getting old.
Happens to the best of us.
I heard that. I'll give you one more question if you want, Grant.
You were about to talk about Cash Acts, Chris.
You asked what I would do differently. You know, I would have taken responsibility for being a good manager a lot earlier in my farming career. I wish that I had started really looking at books about how to think about money in a business much earlier, and with the caveat that I am a co-author on the book, but also with the caveat that I wrote a lot of the soft fuzzy stuff for the book, not the hard stuff. I would really recommend that everybody go out and get a copy of the new book from Moses, the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Educational Service, called Fearless Farm Finances, and really learn about how to evaluate the profitability of your business, the differences between profitability and cash flow, and how to understand where those things exist in tension with each other, and what the indicators are that you're actually getting ahead versus just being able to pay your bills.
I just bought it. I haven't had a chance to read it myself, but I think we should make it a tradition for Farminars to give book recommendations right at the end. So here's two of mine. Permaculture by Sepp Holzer, Seppholzer. Just came out. Really great book talking about methods. And Work the System by Sam Carpenter, I believe. It's more of a business philosophy book about realizing that the world isn't mass chaos, it's a series of systems. And if we think about things beforehand, we're way more efficient, we're way happier, and we're way more profitable as people. Any other book recommendations?
Who's the author on that?
Sam Carpenter, I believe.
Sam Carpenter.
Yeah. Work the System. I'll put it in the notes here.
Great. You know, the Beyond the Fearless Farm Finances, I think the book that has probably had the biggest, two that have had the biggest influences for me are Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is not about farming at all.
GTD,
but is about GTD,
great
managing time, really using that system. The better I've gotten at that, the better my life has gotten. And then the other one is the E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Yep.
And talking about business process development, documentation, and thinking about your business as a business rather than just as taking something that you love to do and turning it into a monster.
Yep. Great book.
All right, two. That's it. I'm calling it off.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
So are we all going to sing a lullaby for Luke?
It's a new tradition. We're gonna sing a lullaby. Hit it, guys. Just kidding. Really great job. Unbelievable. Such a privilege to get to do these. I love the Farminars. I love everybody that gets to share their ideas, and I really appreciate you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you all so much.
Good night. Join us next week. Thank you, Chris. Join us next week for our last Farminar, the Winter Farminar series. Ron Roseman and Nathan Anderson talking about integrating crops and livestock systems. Good night.